I want to talk to you about the very basic principle of multiplicity on multiple endpoints, and especially in an area where there's no common agreement on that there's only one primary endpoint that relevant for the medical decisions, but that there's a disagreement. So I will talk about the multivariate analysis of treatment in multiple sclerosis and using the Wei Lachin procedure. The next one. The problem, as I already noted, is there were, at that time when this study was performed, there were multiple endpoints with equal priority in MS, and there could be no agreement on setting either a combination of this or a hierarchy, and the endpoints were very different. The first one, which is the most common one, is the progression of the disease through the expanded disability status scale, which is this, second one is the standard neurological status, then the ambulation index and the number of attacks required, corticosteroid treatment, and the time to the first attack requiring such treatment. So very different endpoints. Next slide. For those who are not familiar with this, the EDSS is a scale ranging from 1 to 10 in steps of 0.5. Ambulatory index range from 1 to 9 in steps of 1. The SNS is a scale ranging from 0 to 99. The number of attacks, of course, is a counting variable, and the time to first attack is a duration or a time to event data. So these were the problems we had to face and to cope with. There was no clear, or there no agreement on a hierarchy at that point. There was no agreement on no agreement on a composite endpoint. So we had to deal with this, and the problem is the different nature of the endpoints. Next slide, please. Yeah. Due to the large number of endpoints which were under consideration, we were, I think a Bonferroni or any other adjustment was not very practical, so we were going for multivariate analysis. Next one. And an additional requirement from the medical point of view was that it was not just a test. We should not test in any direction, but it was not allowed from the clinical side that one of the endpoints should be worse in the treatment group compared to the placebo group. So we had also to use a directional test. Next one. The solution we found, and I think that is maybe a solution for all multiple endpoint situation where the endpoints are very different. We had to look for a multivariate test which is able to combine the variables of different nature and to test the directional alternatives. You see the null and the alternative hypothesis. And what we decided to do is to use a non-parametric test of an O'Brien type, namely the Wei Lachin test. Next one. The test statistics from the Wei Lachin procedure is the usual formulations here, but what is interesting is the theta parameter or vector, which is the vector of the Mann-Whitney difference or the effect vector. And this is a Mann-Whitney difference between the two treatment groups. And this choice in this test enables us to compare the different natures of the different variables of different natures. Next one. In the end, we had the results were very impressive. The global difference was highly significant. The Mann-Whitney difference, the total was also very good with a confidence interval excluding the 0, and all the endpoints were also significant, but this is not the point I wanted to go to. Next one. I think the main point I wanted to stress here is that there might be situations from a medical part where we are not able to decide on one endpoint, but we have to go for multiple endpoints, that we are not able to or cannot agree on a hierarchy of these endpoints. And it's even more complicated if we have endpoints of different nature, counts, scores, values, and time to event data. So in the end, in this situation, only non-parametric tests are available, and I think the Mann-Whitney difference is a good solution here to compare all these different variables. And beside that, I think that this kind of test is especially useful in the situation when we have a closed testing procedures where we have to find or to test many different combinations of different kinded variables. Thank you very much.
Thank you for a very nice presentation. As you have noticed, we are really close to the speed limit. We will only have 10 minutes per presentation and then 5 minutes for the discussant and a few more fudging minutes to bring up comments from the floor. And now I invite Peter Volkers to comment on this nice presentation.
Okay, when I first saw these slides, I asked myself, it's quite an interesting approach. Why haven't I seen this not in other trials? And I went back to all my submissions I've done in the past, and frankly speaking, I've not seen any submission where in a confirmatory trial there was a multivariate test used, and also multivariate tests, especially this Wei Lachin procedure, which is on the market for decades, is seldom or rarely used in even in clinical trial applications if you look into the protocols there. And that might have several reasons. One reason is if you look into our guidelines in the meantime, what we have guidelines for most indications, and according to these guidelines, we want to see the effects for specific parameters. So there might be a situation that we have more than one parameter, but these situations are not so often. And in case we have one parameter, then we have more than one parameter, then we need some conclusions that at least one of these parameters is clinically significant and has a statistically significant and has a clinically relevant effect. So the point is that let's say the place or the way such procedures like the Wei Lachin procedure may be used is more as a gatekeeper for follow-up tests. With regard to the Wei Lachin procedure, I think it's a non-parametric procedure. It allows for the summary of different scales. However, it has also some problems. If the overall null hypothesis is rejected, then there's still the question which parameter is significant, shows an effect, and it's also not totally clear what's the weight of the single parameters in the complete in the test statistic, and whether it might be possible that let's say the negative effect in some parameters are over compensated by positive effects in other parameters. So for a testing procedure, as a gatekeeper, the Wei Lachin procedure might be helpful, but it's hard, I think, to allow for clinical interpretation of the results. Some other problems that might arise with this procedure is it's an asymptotic procedure. It's asymptotically normal distributed. So the question is, what is the minimum sample size you need for in order to have a good approximation to the normal distribution? It makes some assumptions about missing data, and the question is how robust is this procedure against violations of these assumptions? And also, how does it compare to other parametric tests, other parametric multivariate tests? A third point is, if you use this procedure, then I think you also have to use non-parametric procedures for the single components of you want to analyze, and there the question comes up whether it would be more powerful to use other procedures that use the optimal tests for each of these components. Okay, and to me the question comes where the right place for this procedure is, and it seems, but this is a personal point of view, that it's more the explorative area where such multivariate tests might be helpful. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Peter. Thomas, any response?
So many questions at one time. I think, oh, sorry, too many questions, and some are very technical. I will not go into, but I think the impact of the individual point is, especially in this case, is not relevant because we had a directional test, so we were looking just in one direction, so there could be no negative effect in one variable which will be compensated by another variable. So at this point, the directional tests goes on.
But this is not totally clear to me, because your test statistics is a weighted sum of the single test statistics and divided by the inverse of the variance covariance.
Yeah.
So why isn't it possible to have a, let's say, a positive effect in the end, a positive overall effect, when some of the components are negative?
I will look it up and come back to you later. I cannot do it now.